Today is going to be a slightly different video. If you can't tell by the thumbnail, I want to talk to you about my first pregnancy and my labor and delivery, and I just want to share my story. And the reason being is because I feel like when I was a first-time mom, I got on YouTube and I was constantly searching videos and just trying to prepare myself for pregnancy and how things were going to go down. Now, you can watch videos all day long, but you never know how your pregnancy and your labor and delivery are going to go because everyone is different. But I thought I would share a little bit of insight about mine because I feel like whatever you could just about go through, I did. So I wanted to give a little bit of insight about that. I'm also currently pregnant right now. I'm expecting baby boy number 2. He is due in June of this year. His name is Caleb. This pregnancy has gone a little differently than my first one, so hopefully I'll be able to share that one in the future, or excuse me, this one in the future as well. But I wanted to talk to you about Tatum and how my pregnancy went with him and how it was getting him here. So the first trimester that when I found out that I was pregnant with Tatum was great. Tatum was born in November, so I found out that I was pregnant with him around February, March. So I had a little bit of a different season pregnancy than I am right now, which is great though, because I'm experiencing both. But with Tatum, the first trimester was actually not bad. I was very tired, very hungry, typical, nothing crazy. Second trimester, I felt like I was superwoman. I got a lot of my energy back and I had just started to kind of really show. I had popped, I guess you could say. And at the time before I got pregnant, I was more overweight than I wanted to be, or I was heavier than I wanted to be. So when I started showing with Tatum, I thought that it was like the best thing ever because I always had like a pooch or a belly. And at this point I was pregnant and it didn't matter because I was pregnant. And I just embraced the belly and I embraced the weight gain. And I really, really enjoyed it. And then by the third trimester, I had developed gestational diabetes because of the first and the second trimester. I did not work out. I ate whatever I wanted to eat. Trolleys were my favorite. And I just didn't really care. I had gotten to the point that I was so tired. I was so hungry in the first trimester that I really just kind of ate and did whatever. This pregnancy is much different than that. I kind of learned my lesson. But I had developed gestational diabetes very early on. So I constantly had to track my food. I went and met with a nutritionist who advised me on how to eat, what to eat, how often to eat. And at the time, I hated it. I hated sitting in that room with my husband, basically telling me that I was just eating all the wrong things and doing all the wrong things because I felt really guilty. But I'm glad that I did that looking back on it because it really helped me with my weight loss journey after I had Tatum. So I'm appreciative of it now. But I met with a dietitian and, not a dietitian, I wouldn't call it that. Nutritionists who kind of guide you on what you can eat to kind of keep your sugar levels down and things like that. So then I had to log what I ate every day, and then I also had to check my sugar levels after every meal for 2 hours. So I would eat, and then 2 hours later I had to check my sugar level, and that was after every single meal, every single day until I had Tatum. I had a notebook that I had to keep everything in, had to take it with me to my appointment so I could basically tell them when I was bad and I ate cake and my sugar was high that day. So, yeah, it was hard, okay? Don't judge me, okay? I wanted to eat all the things and he craved like sweets. He really did. He loved them. He still does. But, so for the third trimester, I was suffering with the gestational diabetes. I kind of got it somewhat on track, never really fully though, let's be honest, I didn't. The pelvic pain started to kind of pick up a little bit, the lower back pain. And then once you reach like the second, third trimester-ish time, this funny thing starts to happen where your abs kind of like separate. So you kind of get this cone shaped. Anytime you try to like get up, that was wild. Wild, I tell you. And it's happening now that I'm pregnant with Caleb, but it made it difficult to sleep. Come the third, let's just be honest, okay? By the third trimester, I was extremely uncomfortable. you're going to see different things online. Some girls maybe just hold pregnancy really well. Some of them just don't complain. I'm a complainer, okay? If I'm uncomfortable, you're going to know it. And every night I was pretty much uncomfortable. It was very difficult to kind of turn over. He loved to like nestle down into my rib cage, which kind of became a game, because I would like flip over and he'd nestle down, and then I'd have to like slowly roll over and get him to the other side, and he'd be pissed. But I would be comfortable. So that's how that all happened. The third trimester, it was extremely uncomfortable. There was a time where, and I had to pee like every few hours. So at one point there was two things that my husband did. One, he did like the lock arm. So anytime he knew that I grabbed his hand in the middle of the night, I needed his hand to help me pull myself up and roll over. So in the middle of the night, I would really just grab his hand. He'd be asleep, and I would grab it, and he would just lock his arm, knowing that I was going to use him to pull myself up and roll over and go to the other side of the bed. Or if worst case, I really had a hard time getting out of bed, he would come over to the other side of the bed, grab me by my ankles, pull me out of the bed, and then sit me up, because it was weird with the cone shape. If you try, they don't recommend that you try and just sit up. They want you to kind of roll over to your side and get up that way. And that's hard to do, because I put on, I think starting out, I was anywhere between like 155, 160, something like that. And by the end of it, I was pushing 200 pounds. And I felt it, girl. I felt like I was pushing 200 pounds. And that's, I think, what made it uncomfortable. But anyway, we can do a whole nother video about just all that. But anyway, let's get into how he came into this world. It was a lovely sunshiny day. Birds came down and chirped. No, that's not what happened. What really happened was I worked all the way up until I had Tatum. Now, let me say one more thing before I get into this, because this is going to kind of help too. About 7 months into my pregnancy, I feel like I just had like an emotional breakdown. I don't know if it hit me that I was pregnant or what, but I just started crying at work. And if this is a video that if you have to take medication for anxiety, or if you did not have a vaginal birth and you had to have a C-section, there is no shaming on this, because I'm just not one of those people that believe that if you have to take medication that you're any less, or if you have to bring your child in here by a cesarean that you're any less. I feel like whatever we have to do to take care of ourselves and our child and get them here is what we're going to do. And as long as everybody's healthy, that's all that matters. So I had to start taking like a form of Zoloft about the last 3 months of my pregnancy. My anxiety got the best of me. I was very like emotional, stressed, worried, like all those things. Started taking that. It was a huge game changer. Still take it to this day. I think it developed well before my pregnancy, and then the pregnancy just kind of tipped it off for me. I think I do struggle with anxiety. So I started taking that. And then on a Friday right before I had him, I was really uncomfortable. My blood pressure had spiked a couple of times in between then and right before I had him. And we had to monitor that as well. I was also, I ended up developing preeclampsia. So that day at work, I called my doctor and I was like, hey, I'm not feeling very good. So I checked my blood pressure at work. My blood pressure is really high. And they were like, well, why don't you come on in? And I went in, blood pressure was still high. And they were like, well, we're going to send you to the emergency room, and we're going to go ahead and possibly start the induction process, because they were worried that I was going to develop preeclampsia. So I got to the hospital. I met my doctor there. As he was there, he checked my cervix, all that stuff. Nothing had dilated, but they were just really worried with me being, he was due November 24th. I had him November 11th. They were just worried that it was going to be, potentially that he was going to be very big, and that it could just end up being more than what we wanted it to be. So I was there. I got to the emergency room. I called my husband on the way and I said, hey, they're sending me to the emergency room. It looks like, this might be it. So he left. I called my mom. My mom's like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you at? I got my bag packed. I'm coming. I'm on the way. She was so excited. And got there. My husband showed up. He says, okay, we're going to induce you. We're going to get you into a room. Give me some time. Get everything situated. And I got into my room. Now, where I live, the hospital was great. per se, but labor and delivery is really good. And I'm going to speak on that a lot during this part. But I got in there, I got situated. One of the very first people that I met was one of my nurses, and I won't share her name just in case she doesn't want me to, but I loved her. I loved her. She became, and she probably thinks I'm absolutely insane, but I don't know if it was just the way she spoke to me, how she just guided me through the whole process. I trusted her from the very beginning, and it just made something that could potentially have been really scary. And I was scared. I mean, this is my first pregnancy, my first delivery. I don't know what to expect. I know that I have gestational diabetes working against me, high blood pressure working against me. I haven't dilated. I'm going to have to be induced. I think if anything, I just did not want to be induced. I hadn't heard good things about it. And I just didn't want to go down that road, but we had to. So when she came in, they started the induction process where I had to take like medicine that would kind of help me start dilating, hopefully, and going into labor. They hooked up my IV, did all that, kind of got me nestled in, and then we waited. And then every few hours, I forget what it's called, but they would come in and then they would like give me this medicine vaginally that would hopefully help to start my dilation of my cervix. Well, it never worked. We did it every 4 hours, several times for like the next 2 days. I was in the hospital for 5 days. And I'll be honest, this is going to be a brutally honest video. For me, I hated having my cervix checked. It was absolutely one of the most uncomfortable things I had a C-section, and it was more uncomfortable than healing from a C-section. I hated it. And nothing was happening. Every 4 hours they were coming in, inserting more medicine. Nothing was working. I wasn't dilated. So then they came in and inserted a bulb. And what it does is it just helps to expand the cervix. And it's literally like a balloon, and they put it in and it kind of helps to expand and hopefully get things moving. Well, leading up to that, she came in to check my cervix, not the original nurse, one of the midwives or something. She came in, and at this point of her checking my cervix so many times in the last couple of days, even my mom was like, I was in tears, and my mom was like, hey, can we do something different, because she's extremely uncomfortable. I mean, this woman was everything she could to get to my cervix. It wasn't the actual just checking of the cervix. It was that they couldn't find things and checking it, and it was just extremely uncomfortable. And it was, I don't know if my cervix is just further back. I don't know what the deal is. I'm not a doctor. I don't know all the terminology. All I know, it was very difficult for them to check my cervix. And she was like, hey, I really think that we should insert this bulb. And I looked at her and I'm crying at this point. And I was like, hey, if we're going to do this, is it going to be more uncomfortable than it is with you checking my cervix? And she was like, yes. I said, I don't know if I can do it. I said, it hurts. It really hurts for you to do that. And she said, well, I can give you something to kind of help relax you. I said, okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. So then she comes in, she said, I'm going to give you two different things. She said, I'm going to, I can't remember. I think the first one was a pill, and then the second one was an IV. And at that point, my dad had showed up. My mom and my dad and my husband were there. And I'm pretty sure she gave me the pill first. She said, okay, well, this is going to kick in. And then once we do this, we're going to put the other one in the IV. Now, once this kicks in, you need to let me know, because we need to get your dad and your mom and everybody out of here, because I'm going to lean you back and we're going to put the bulb in. And I said, okay. So I'm laying there, and probably about 10 minutes, I looked at her. I said, I think it's kicking in, Jesus. And I looked up at my husband, and he was like, are you okay? I was like, I'm fine. But I think everybody needs to get out. So, of course, he stayed. He stayed over here by my shoulder. She was down at the end. My parents left, and she leaned me back. I literally felt like I was on my head. So I went from laying kind of like this is my head, and then to being kind of like this. And they, came in and put the bulb in and all that. And she said, okay, well, you might feel like you're a little hungover, or like you're drunk, you're loopy. I said, I have never been this drunk in my life. I was so out of it. Didn't feel a thing. I don't know what she did down there, but it happened and it was done. So then she sets me up. Then it was the waiting game again. And all the while, they're still trying to maintain my blood pressure. And The bulb, again, they came in, took the bulb out. The bulb didn't do anything. I think I've reached at most maybe 3 centimeters, and we're on day 2 at this point. And then by now, I was even more uncomfortable. I was like, look, nothing's working. I'm over it. Like, there's nothing happening. I'm uncomfortable. I've been here for 2 days. What are we going to do? So it was probably the end of the I don't even know, to be honest, because I had probably the 2nd day or 3rd day. At that point, they went and spoke to the doctor, and they were kind of reevaluating everything. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to safely get the baby here? And I said, look, at this point, I would rather just have a C-section, because nothing's happening. You know, if something had happened, it'd be different, but nothing that they were doing, whether they were putting in the medication or the bulb, nothing worked, and I was just done. So the doctor comes in and he says, hey, do you want a C-section? And this will tell you something. I said, yes. Yes, I do. I would like to have a C-section at this point because I'm tired. He said, okay. He said, well, let's get you ready. I'm gonna have him here in about an hour. I said, okay, all right. And I think that actually it was probably, I think he said, I'm gonna have him here in about 30 minutes, because at this point I had already had my epidural. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm trying to like think of all this while it's coming to me. Let me talk to you about the epidural. So I had the epidural. The doctor comes in, or the anesthesiologist comes in, and he says, hey, I'm just going to sit you up. Just lean over on your husband. The epidural did not hurt. I didn't have any issues with the epidural. If you've ever had like a bump on your back and somebody popped it, that's kind of what it felt like. A little bit of pressure, didn't worry about it. Everything was fine. I had the epidural laid back down. Now, let me tell you, when you get the epidural, they give you this pin like thing. And anytime that you start to feel, because I still had contractions, I just wasn't I wasn't dilating. So anytime I would have a contraction and like my epidural was kind of like wearing off or just needed more of it, you just push this little button and then the epidural kind of releases more, and it feels like this cold little stream that runs down your back, and then all of a sudden you feel better. That was nice. By this time, that was nice, okay? And had the epidural. The doctor comes in, he says, okay, well, we're gonna get you ready for the C-section. So my nurse comes in, she's kind of going over everything with me. And I remember at one point, she had to get off because she had to go home. And I said, that's not gonna work for me, because I need you to stay here. I don't know these other nurses, and they don't know me, and I don't know them. She said, but I got to go home. I said, well, you going to be here tomorrow? Because I don't. And they sent these little lady nurses in, and I was almost 200 pounds at this point, and they're just that my catheter was in. They were trying to, empty my bag. She come in, she was like, oh, you do pee a lot. I said, I tried to tell you. She said, the bag's just about overflowing. She come in, bless her heart, she was this big, and she tried to pick my leg up, and I was just laughing because I couldn't feel a thing, and it was just hilarious. Well, when he says we're doing C-section, woo, it was like a swarm of people come in, nurses come in, the doctors are in, everybody's all over the place. They're getting me ready, they're getting the room ready, because at this point he's coming. So his little bassinet's going, they've got stuff, they're flipping switches and this and that and getting me so they can roll me down the hallway, and they got to get Josh suited up. He looks like he's part of ET at this point. And another nurse came in, and I really liked her too. So there's nurse A or RNA, and then RNB. I don't know what they are, but she was really nice. She had a good personality. I loved her. And she came in, she said, I'm going to be with you during your C-section. And then another girl come in who couldn't find out I went to high school with. It's starting to get awkward at this point because I live in a small town. Everybody knows you. There was a couple people there that I ended up knowing. Now, kind of find out my favorite nurse from the very beginning actually lives in my neighborhood. Like, you know what I'm saying? So everybody comes in, and all I could think about was like, all these people are about to see my vagina. Everybody's about to see it. And then I thought, you know what? I don't give a damn. Let's go. Let's go. So they come in, they get me into the operating room. Josh has not come in yet. And they lay me down on the table, and the doctor who's performing the C-section, they get everything situated, and he kind of starts picking at my belly, like touching it and pulling on it and stuff. And he said, did you feel any of that? And I said, yes, I did. I felt that. Here's the thing. I have a hard time getting numb. Whether I have dental work done, I had to have stitches in my knee. I have a hard time getting numb. And he says, are you sure? I said, uh-huh. I said, you went to the right, and then you went to the left, and then you came back to the right again. And he's like, oh yeah, she's feeling it. Sit her up. Now here comes the big boy, the spinal. The spinal is like the big protective uncle of the epidural. So there's the epidural that's like, hey girl, I got you. And then there's the uncle that comes in that's like, I got you. You know what I'm saying? So they sit me up. Mind you, I can't do nothing because I can't feel my legs. So RN nurse B, she sits me up and she says, hey, I need you to lean on me like you did with your husband for the epidural, because we're basically going to do the same thing, but it's going to be a lot stronger. And I said, okay. And I said, can I hug you like I would my mama? And she looked at me and she said, yes, honey, you can. And she was so sweet. And I laid down on her, and I have a picture of her holding me. It's like, I don't know why I love that picture so much, because in that moment I was absolutely terrified, and she just made me feel so comfortable. So they give me the spinal, and as she's holding me before they lay me down, she says, look, I'm going to tell you, once they give you the spinal, don't try and move. She said, because you ain't going to be able to move, okay? Let us take care of it. And if you've ever watched a TV show where somebody's like, something happens, that like somebody was in a car accident or something, and they have to put them on a gurney, that's how I felt. I couldn't do anything. I was sitting there with her like this, and then all of a sudden everybody from all directions, it was like 6 people, on like 3 on either side, grabbed me, turned me around, and then laid me down. And it was the wildest thing. Now, at that point, he touched my belly and stuff again. He's like, do you feel anything? And I said, no. And then the girl that I went to high school with was standing above me. She's a nurse. And she said, how are you feeling? And at first I was fine. But then I started to get this really sharp pressure and like pain in my head. And she told me that it could just be from having the spinal and then them laying me down. And she just kept reassuring me like, it's okay, it's okay. And I think that they were waiting for a point that she could give me something to help. But because the C-section was getting started, there was a time frame that was good to do it and maybe one that wasn't. I don't know. But I just remember I kept saying, and then at this point, Josh came in and he's trying to hold my hand. And he kept saying like, squeeze my hand. And I couldn't. Like my head hurt so bad that I could not even open my eyes. Like I just remember laying there and everything was really bright. And I remember thinking like, okay, my head hurts so, it felt like somebody was like just squeezing my head as tight as they could. I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm being honest. This is what happened. And then Josh is wanting me to squeeze his hand, but I couldn't because I couldn't do anything. I just felt like I couldn't focus on anything else other than the fact that my head hurt really bad. And I couldn't open my eyes. Every time I would go to open my eyes, I was very out of it at this point. And I just remember her saying, can I give her this? Can I give her that? And it was like that the whole time. And then I remember feeling pressure because I kind of felt that pressure of him like doing the C-section, like kind of cutting me open, which was fine. You don't feel anything. I don't want to scare you. You don't feel anything. It was just like if you're numb somewhere and you touch your hand or something, you know, it wasn't painful at all. Everybody was extremely nice. And the whole time, everybody communicated with me. Everybody was talking. Everybody was happy. Some of my nurses actually were kind enough to take my camera and took some pictures of everything that was going on in the labor and delivery, or in the operating room. They got pictures of Tatum and Josh and me. And I'm so grateful for that. And then I actually have this one picture where they're pulling Tatum out. Oh my gosh, make me cry. And then they brought Tatum around to me. They laid him down and I lost it, Jesus. I lost it. Because he came out and you could just hear the rustle of like everybody rushing to him to make sure that he's okay. And is he crying? They're getting him cleaned out. They're cleaning out his lungs and nose and stuff. And then all of a sudden he starts crying and the whole room is just like, ah! It was just that moment of like, oh my God, he's here. He's good. Like, I'm good. The hell with my head pain. I don't even care at this point. Josh went over, they cut the umbilical cord, and then Josh brought him over to me and he's holding him. And Oh my God, it was to see, I'm looking at Tatum, but I'm looking at Josh to see his face, and he's just like beaming, and he's so proud to like bring him to me. And it was one of the best moments of my life. Holy crap. And after that, a lot of it just kind of gets busy again, and they get him situated. They wheel me back to Josh goes out. And so Josh was the first person to hold Tatum, but then they also asked me before I went into the operating room if it would be okay if my mom held him, of course, before I did, because I still had to be sewn up and, you know, all that stuff. And so my mom got to hold him while they were finished getting me ready. And then when they brought me back to my room, I held him for the first time. And I remember holding him. And I have a picture of me holding him right when I got back into the room. But I will say, I don't know if it's just a mixture of the epidural and the spinal and then just all the things that happened. It's very vague, me holding him for the first time. And maybe that's why a lot of women choose to do like a natural delivery with no kind of medications or anything like that, because they just want to be in the moment. And trust me, I would too if I could. But at that time, it was better for me to have a C-section and me be okay and him be okay, versus me trying to do something that at the time my body would just not do. And once we got back to the room, this is where all the beautifulness comes in. So he comes in, the nurse starts to give him like his first bath. She was the best. She was so sweet with him. And she was holding him, and she was kind of just like brushing his hair, and he was just looking at her like she was just the best thing ever. And she was talking to him, and kind of found out she had no children, never had any children. She was like, well, I don't know. And she could have a story that maybe she wasn't able to get pregnant, but she says, honey, you wouldn't believe the amount of babies I've had in my life. And you could just tell that she just was smitten with him. And all of the nurses came in. They were absolutely amazing. Everybody was so friendly. And then from there, I left and went to my recovery room. Once I got to my recovery room, at this point, it had been a few hours since I'd had a shower. Since I'd had a C-section. And I had him in the afternoon, like early afternoon. So for the rest of the day, I think that we had finally gotten into our recovery room. We were getting situated with him. People were coming in and just checking me, making sure that, you know, my body was doing okay after surgery. They were checking my blood pressure. My blood pressure was still really high. They put me on magnesium and other things to try and get my blood pressure to come down. They were also giving me pain management from my C-section. But it was just so sweet, because I was holding Tatum and I was feeding him, and Josh was with him. My mom was there, and it was great. And then it got to the point where I know that people were doing their jobs, but it was like every hour somebody was coming in to check me. And they'd be like, well, we really need to get your blood pressure down before we can release you tomorrow, because if we don't get it down, you know, we want to make sure that it's okay. But I was like, I can't get my blood pressure to go down because everybody keeps coming in here messing with me, Jesus. Because they kind of come in, they push your stomach down to try and get all of your organs and stuff to settle back down where they're supposed to go. And then they were checking my C-section like area, where I had the C-section, checking all of that. And then finally and at this point, 2 other people came in that I knew, and I was like, I just don't like my hoo-ha being out here like this. You know, it's just too much going on. I haven't shaved in 4 days now, and this is just not the life for me. I said, I want to take a shower. I want to take a shower, Jesus. So I got up and took a shower. Tree went with me. Tree was my box that had my IV hooked up to it, and my blood pressure monitor and all that stuff. So I remember getting out of the bed, and Mom was like, do you really think you should take a shower now? I said, yes, I feel nasty. I feel nasty. I need to wash my butt. Okay. So I took the Tree, and where I had the C-section, I had like a fanny pack, and it was a bulb inside the fanny pack that held like all the lidocaine to help kind of keep the incision numb. Thank God for that thing, let me tell you. And I had to take the fanny pack. I had to take Tree with me. Had all these cords I was hooked up to. But when I tell you I figured out how to take that shower, woo-wee! I put that Tree right on up to the shower. I had a little bench in there, and I sat my bag down on it, and I took me a shower, girl, and I shaved. And I did all the things within less than 24 hours after a C-section. And I felt like a new woman. Now, the honest part about after having a C-section is at some point you've got to use the restroom. The good thing is it didn't come out your hoo-ha, so your hoo-ha doesn't burn. But the bad thing is if you have to go cacas. And I'm tempted not to share this, but I feel like I should be honest. At one point I had to use the restroom, and they want you to do that. They want to make sure that you can use the restroom and all those things like that before you leave. And I was in there with my mom and my husband, and I was like, Mama, I think I need to go poop. And she was like, okay. And I was like, and I started crying. I started crying so bad because I was like, I need you to come with me. I was so embarrassed. I did not want to do that, but I knew that there was no way that I could hold my gown up, hold the fanny pack, hold the tree, and just try and do this and be comfortable. And Josh was like, do you want me to come in there with you? And I was like, no, I'm good. I think you've seen enough at this point. I cannot take a caca in front of you. Not like this. I can't. So my mom comes in, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like crying, and she's like, well, what's the matter? And I said, Mama, I am 29 years old, and this is embarrassing. She said, honey, I used to wipe your butt all the time. You just had a C-section. If you need to use the restroom, use the restroom, okay? It's going to be fine. And we laughed while I cried. But we got through it, and she helped me out, and it was so nice. And it was funny because I wasn't going to have anybody here when I first had Tatum. I wanted it to just be me, Josh, Tatum, us bond, and just have that time together. And at one point, after I had the C-section and we were in the room waiting to go into the recovery, I looked at my mom, and she said, do you want me to come home with you? And I said, yeah, yes, I do. Please come home with me. So she took off work because she had told them, months in advance that, hey, my daughter's going to be having a baby, and if she needs me, I'm going to be there. So and she had my dad bring her back, and she stayed with us for a week, maybe a little over a week, and it was a blessing to have her there because she did so well with like helping me when I needed it, but not making me feel like I couldn't do it or like taking that time and just being overbearing or, being too much. She was there. And if I needed her, she knew I would ask. And if I didn't, she did other things. She'd wash the dishes. She'd get the bottles ready. Like she would just keep me company. She would just rest with us. And that was just such a blessing to have her there. I'm looking forward to having her here with Caleb. Hopefully she's going to stay 2 weeks this time. But that was just extremely nice. And it was at one point, once we got home, we got situated. They finally did discharge me after getting my blood pressure down to a comfortable level. And that was just an amazing feeling to go home and be in your own atmosphere. And I could get into a whole nother story of that. But it was just really nice to have her here. So I'm looking forward to that again. Once I got home, let me explain this too. So once I got home, after having the C-section, I didn't kind of baby it. I know that they kind of wanted you to just relax and do this and do that and not do anything. I didn't go up the stairs for the first couple of weeks because our bedroom was downstairs, but I still did try to do what I could. And then once I would get uncomfortable, I would go rest because I didn't want a baby. I knew that at some point she was going to be gone and Josh had to go back to work and I was going to need to be able to function. So I would get up, I would move around, do whatever I could, do things that made me feel mom. Like I would do the bottles or fold some of his clothes or just feed him and be with him. And then when he would take a nap, I would take a nap. And then we'd get up and we would do it again. And they did send me home with like some Percocet. But I don't really like the way it makes me feel. So if I did get really uncomfortable, I would just half it and then eat something with it. And I tried not to do that any more than I had to, only if I got really uncomfortable, because sometimes just resting in the bed and taking a nap was enough to make me feel better. So overall, it was a really great experience. I would do a C-section all over again. I'm probably going to have to. And I don't mind that because I've been through it once and I kind of know what to expect and how to deal with it. But if you do develop gestational diabetes, the biggest advice that I could give would be to really follow their advice on what you're eating. Try to stay away from sugars, especially even natural sugars. Strawberries have a lot of natural sugar in them, and things like that. Try and get as much exercise as you can. Just go for small walks, or if you do work out before you got pregnant, try to keep those up. I've been doing a lot of that with the second pregnancy, where I've been eating everything that I would when I was in my health and fitness journey. I don't eat like I did my first pregnancy, and I really feel like it's made a difference. I also go for walks, and I also still weightlift a little bit, but much lighter weights, and I think it's made a huge difference. So I hope this video prepares you a little bit on kind of what to expect, but hopefully doesn't freak you out too bad. It really is the most beautiful thing that you will ever do in your entire life. And no matter what happens, you will get through it. And when you come out the other end, you're going to be so proud of yourself for bringing life into this world, no matter which way you have to do it. And it's a beautiful thing. And I hope that you enjoy it or have enjoyed it. Because it doesn't get any better. It really doesn't. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe, to stick around, and give it a thumbs up if you, comment below too. What do you want? I could go into a whole realm of gestational diabetes. I could get into more of the story of labor and delivery, but anyway, it's starting to get lengthy, so I just thought I would give you a rundown. But I love you all so much. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day. Okay, bye.